When I left the house today, I was gonna wear 2 shirts because I noticed going through these photos, he always wears 2 shirts. And I thought that that was the perfect combination of traditional and avant-garde at the same time.
Well, it's very 90s Abercrombie and Fitch, actually, the layered look. They were very into that. Hello, I'm Nick Pinkerton.
And I'm Michael Bilandic.
And we're here to talk about Paul Morrissey dossier in the second issue of the Metrograph magazine.
Paul Morrissey was one of the great cult directors of all time, one of the great comedic directors of all time, one of the great underground filmmakers. I think most people sort of just know him from a few movies he made with Andy Warhol, Flesh, Trash, and Heat, and then the horror comedies with Udo Kier and Joe D'Alessandro, Flesh for Frankenstein and Blood for Dracula. But it's so much more than that.
As you mentioned, it's beyond filmmaking. You know, he intersects with just about everyone in New York City's art freak world, particularly in the 1960s, from showing Brian De Palma's first film, Icarus, at his storefront movie theater, to becoming the manager of the Velvet Underground. And it's all the more fascinating because in some ways he's the least likely guy to be around the factory scene, for example, because he's a self-described conservative, reactionary.
He was the sort of responsible party, it seems like. So this is the person who could save the Max's Kansas City bar tab for tax reasons, save the payment stub for how much he paid someone to crack a whip on the dance floor. But also, someone like Nico could leave the country. You could trust this guy with your lyric book for the Marble Index. So he amassed this amazing collection of stuff.
Paul hung on to everything, be it his ticket to a London premiere screening of Star Wars, which he hated, along with so many other things.
He spoke positively of R2-D2. I read an interview, but yeah.
The films themselves have just been very hard to see up until relatively recently, the lion's share of them. And how this all came about was through Brian Block, our friend, who was involved with kind of trying to get the films back out there at the end of Morrissey's life, working with his niece Marissa, and through Brian, Michael Chaikin, another friend of ours, came on to put the archive together. I don't think Marissa had really heard many people flip out about Paul's work and, the exceptional nature of his life. As we kept bringing people in, we just had to kind of tell her over and over again, we are the 6 people in the entirety of New York City, if not the world, to whom this is Alibaba's cave. This is an absolute treasure trove. As mentioned, this is the second issue of Metrograph magazine, and we've got, I think, 42 pages devoted to the subject of Paul Morrissey. We started out with Mike's interview with Michael Chaikin and Marissa Crawford. Then we get to the glossy layout where you get to see various artifacts from the archive. Anybody who has even a passing interest in counterculture in New York City in the 1960s and 70s is going to find something, including the scrap of paper on which the name Exploding Plastic Inevitable is struck on for the first time. There's cool pictures of the Velvet Underground that you've never seen before. There's Joe D'Alessandro's ponytail, which Paul kept in an envelope. There's the funeral card for Candy Darling's funeral.
We wanted to try and tell a story of his life, and the idea is to sort of put these pieces together and present something that would be accessible to people who aren't familiar to Paul Morrissey, which blows my mind because I just assume that everyone is a gigantic Paul Morrissey fan.
Then you get to my sprawling essay in which I cover the various unmade films of Paul Morrissey. That's really only for absolute freaks, and I knew it when I was doing it. I got to just spend a week sitting in Paul's beautifully appointed 81st Street apartment full of folderol knickknacks, precious cookie jars. He's a big antiquer, you see. Hopefully by the time you get to my piece, you're sufficiently intrigued by this man of multiple contradictions to want to plunge in still further. And in point of fact, you don't have to watch the movies that are written about because they don't exist.